the Farming Today 5-day forecast.
Hello, very good morning again to you. Well, it's still unsettled as we go through the rest of this week. It's still wet and windy at times, but there's a lot of dry weather around as well, and it should be largely frost-free by night. Now, the big change that we're going to be seeing this week is that the wind will turn from an easterly into more of a southwesterly, so the air is going to be turning milder. Temperatures could hit the mid-teens for many as we go through the week, and as we head towards the end of the week, Thursday or Friday, we could even see 17 degrees Celsius in a few spots, most likely I think across parts of East Anglia. Now for today, well, it's a mild start to the morning for most of us. Temperatures between 5 and 7 degrees Celsius. A touch of localised frost though in parts of northwest Scotland. Largely dry for most of us today with plenty of cloud. There's some low cloud and drizzle with that still easterly wind blowing towards North Sea facing coast, but the wind is lighter than it was at the weekend. Brighter spells developing in southwest England and western Wales today. For Northern Ireland, it's going to be rather cloudy with outbreaks of patchy rain, particularly through the morning, perhaps into the afternoon for some as well. Northwest Scotland is a bright start, but there'll be some persistent rain by the time we get to the end of the day. Top temperatures today of around 7 to 12 degrees Celsius, but just 5 to 7 degrees for eastern Scotland and for northeast England. Overnight tonight, it's cloudy and it's misty again. We've seen some fog this morning. There's some more developing overnight tonight. Rain will be moving eastwards across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. It will be a wet start to the day tomorrow for northwest England, Wales and southwest England, with lows generally between 3 and 7 degrees Celsius. So another frost-free start to the day, of course. Tomorrow, a bright start in the east. It's cloudier in the west with outbreaks of rain moving eastwards across the UK. It'll be turning windier tomorrow with brisk southwesterly winds developing. Top temperatures of 7 to 10 degrees Celsius in the north, probably 10 to 13 though further south, so those temperatures starting to rise. And then on Wednesday, it's a windy day with moderate to fresh southwesterlies. It's cloudy in the south but brighter in the north. Outbreaks of rain for central areas, temperatures higher, 10 to 13 for most, but maybe 14 to 16 Celsius in the south. Now on Thursday, low pressure is to the northwest of the UK. There's another front bringing more rain towards the north with showers again further south. The best chance of some sunshine will be across southeast England with again moderate to fresh southwesterly winds. Highs of 10 to 16 Celsius. And on Friday, still windy across England and Wales. Lighter winds for Scotland and Northern Ireland. The winds turning a bit more northerly in the north, but they'll remain southwesterly elsewhere. Still a bit of rain at first. This is when temperatures could hit 16 or 17 degrees in East Anglia. That's the forecast.
And that was Elizabeth Rossini. And now with Tweet of the Day, here's Doug Allen.
We called them Jeeps, from their initials, Giant, Petrols, GPs, Jeeps. It's kind of obvious, really. Their breeding colonies are widely spread right round the Antarctic continent, particularly on the sub-Antarctic islands. When you see them flying across the open ocean, a couple of 100 miles from where they nest, you might initially mistake them for some kind of mini albatross. Yes, they are graceful flyers, but on land they're more like vultures. With
A very brief Tweet of the Day. On FM, on long wave, on digital and BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 4.
Hello, it's 6 o'clock on Monday the 11th of March. This is Today with Justin Webb and Amol Raj.
The headlines this morning: a picture of the Princess of Wales has been withdrawn by news agencies over concerns that it's been manipulated. The former head of the Borders watchdog says the Home Office is dysfunctional and in urgent need of complete reform. And also in today's programme, Esther Jai, whose daughter Brianna was murdered, meets the mother of one of her killers.
I think that really both of us are mothers who are trying to navigate something that nobody should ever have gone through. Like, I kind of feel a bit of a connection to her as well.
Plus, the sounds of symptoms. People with Parkinson's taking part in a new musical therapy.
It made me think about how strong I am really, and I think I'm learning not to be self-conscious about it. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
BBC News is read this morning by Charles Carroll.
A photograph of the Princess of Wales has been withdrawn by the world's biggest picture agencies, who say that it's been digitally manipulated by Kensington Palace. The image of Kate and her children to mark Mother's Day was the first to be released since she had surgery in January. The Associated Press agency said there was an inconsistency in the alignment of Princess Charlotte's left hand. Kensington Palace has not commented. Graham Satchell reports.
It was thought the picture would quell online speculation and conspiracy theories about the princess's health following surgery earlier this year. But the world's leading picture agencies, who distribute images to media outlets, have now issued what they call a kill notification and have withdrawn the photograph. One agency said on closer inspection it appeared the source, meaning the palace, had manipulated the image. It's thought to be the first time agencies have pulled an official photograph from the palace. Kensington Palace itself has declined to comment.
The recently sacked Independent Inspector of Borders and Immigration has told the BBC that the Home Office is dysfunctional and in urgent need of complete reform. In his first broadcast interview since he was dismissed, David Neil said the public would be appalled to know that Border Force officers at Heathrow's electronic passport gates couldn't raise the alert without waving or whistling. Mr. Neil told the Today podcast there was a lack of accountability.
There is a culture within the Home Office that means that they are sort of blaming up. What do I mean by that? I mean blaming up to ministers. You know, there's a sort of sometimes rolls eyes expressions from senior people you encounter. Well, if it was only not for the beastly Home Secretary, if it was only not for the way that this government's going, which actually is not good enough.
The Home Office says Mr. Neil was sacked for leaking sensitive information and which he was told was inaccurate. Western countries, including the United States and Germany, have been airlifting diplomats out of their embassies in Haiti as the country descends further into violence. The UN says police are only protecting the port, airport and key buildings, leaving armed gangs to loot shops and to carry out attacks. Millions of Haitians are trapped amid the chaos, as our Central America correspondent Will Grant reports.
Many hospitals have all but shut down, and bodies on the streets are not being picked up by morgues, whose staff fear being caught in the middle of a firefight. Over the past few days, gang members have fired on the National Palace and attacked the Interior Ministry with Molotov cocktails. Now the member heads of state of the Caribbean regional bloc, CARICOM, are gathering in Jamaica to discuss the situation in Haiti. It's understood the group is keen for the Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, who's currently in Puerto Rico and unable to return to Haiti, to step down.
Swiss police say 5 cross-country skiers who went missing near the Matterhorn mountain in the Alps over the weekend have been found dead. A search is continuing for a 6th skier. Rescue attempts to find the Swiss nationals have been hampered by high winds and heavy snow. The mother of the murdered transgender teenager, Brianna Guy, has met the family of one of the killers. Brianna was 16 when she was stabbed to death in a park in Cheshire in February last year. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, who were both 15 at the time, were given life sentences last month. Esther Guy, who met Jenkinson's mother last week, told BBC Breakfast that it was important for her to understand what the killer's family had been going through.
The crime that's been committed has impacted so many other people, and obviously what they've gone through is terrible as well, and they've lost a child, and they haven't only lost a child, but they've also got to live with what's happened now for the rest of their life.
The UK government is to provide £117 million over the next 4 years to protect Muslims from hate crime. It'll be used to improve security at mosques, faith schools and community centres. £70 million has already been allocated to protect Jewish community sites. The funding reflects the number of sites used by each faith. And the blockbuster biopic Oppenheimer, about the creator of the atomic bomb, has dominated this year's Oscars, taking home 7 awards, including Best Picture. The film's British director, Christopher Nolan, won his first Academy Award, as did Cillian Murphy, who became the first person from Ireland to win Best Actor. Our culture editor, Katie Rattle, reports from Hollywood.
The Academy voters, for the first time in years, handing that top prize to a widely seen big-budget film. But Christopher Nolan does art house blockbusters. The Zone of Interest, the movie about an Auschwitz commandant, was the first British film ever to win Best International Feature Film. It's in German. leading actress went to Emma Stone for her unpredictable, highly original performance in Frankenstein-esque Poor Things.
My dress is broken. I think it happened during I'm Just Ken. I'm Just Ken.
And although it only won Best Song for Billie Eilish, Barbie's leading man stole the show with a pink, sequin-filled rendition of I'm Just Ken. Just one win, but Ryan Gosling was the highlight of the night.
And that was Katie Razzle reporting from Hollywood.
Charles, thank you very much indeed. It is 6 minutes past 6 and we can go to the weather. And Elizabeth Rizzini. Morning, Elizabeth.
Hello, good morning, Amal. Well, it's still unsettled as we head through this week. Low pressure still very much in charge, so it's going to be wet and windy at times, but lots of dry weather around as well, including today. We'll lose the brisk easterly winds, and the wind is set to turn more southwesterly, so temperatures are set to rise as we head through the week. In fact, for some spots, particularly for the southeast of England and East Anglia, we could get to 16 or 17 Celsius by the time we get to Thursday and Friday. Now, for today, well, it's a mild start. Temperatures generally at around 6 or 7 degrees. There's some mist and fog across the south of England in particular. There's going to be a lot of cloud around as today, but plenty of dry weather too, and some rather misty conditions, as I said this morning. We're between two areas of low pressure. We do still have that easterly wind blowing today, but it's a lot lighter than it was over the weekend, and there won't be as much added wind chill. But still, for those North Sea facing coasts across northeast England and eastern Scotland in particular, still that nagging breeze with some low cloud and some outbreaks of patchy light rain and drizzle. For Wales, for central southern England, for southeast England, it's dull, it's misty this morning, perhaps a few brighter spells a bit later on through the afternoon. And for southwest England, here it should stay dry with some brightness and the chance of a few afternoon isolated showers. Northern England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, it's cloudy and it's damp, more persistent rain moving into western Scotland by the end of the day. Temperatures 7 to 10 degrees Celsius for most of us, maybe 11 or 12 in the south, but just 5 to 7 degrees for northeast England and eastern Scotland. Cold here. That's the forecast.
Elizabeth, thank you. 8 minutes past 6. Let us turn to the papers, which are very much at the front of the news today, and not quite in the way that they normally are. So the front pages feature the photo of the Princess of Wales and her children that is by now very well known. Some of the first editions appear to take it at face value. The Mirror mentions the photo then has been withdrawn, but still calls it a Mother's Day treat, showing the princess happy and relaxed, with the paper's royal editor describing it as a sweet image. The Express says it's a charming photo that proves she's on the mend. The Sun says the photo should dispel the crazy myths online about Kate's health.
But others home in on what the agencies call a kill notice, which tells papers not to use it. The Daily Telegraph said it had been hoped the picture would quell speculation about the health of the Princess of Wales. Instead, it says it's just raised further questions, though it stresses there is no suggestion Kate has been misrepresented. The Times says the picture was withdrawn after a day of online speculation about it. Both papers point out that Kensington Palace had declined to comment. The Daily Mail says that what was meant to be a reassuring picture may have backfired, and that instead of dampening rumours about the princess's health, it may have added to them, thanks to some cack-handed attempts at retouching.
The Times reports that new research suggests there's been an alarming rise in threats of violence against people perceived as insulting Islam. The independent report was commissioned by the government's counter-extremism czar. It exposed links between activities at the forefront of protests in Britain and an extremist radical Islamic party on the Asian subcontinent. Its members are reported to have called for blasphemers to be beheaded.
Town Hall's woke spree is the Daily Mail's headline. It highlights figures from the Taxpayers Alliance suggesting that councils have almost doubled their spending on what the paper calls ridiculous woke jobs in the last 3 years. It says they spent more than £12 million on equality, diversity and inclusion roles in 2020 to 2021 and almost 23 million last financial year.
According to the Times, Keir Starmer wants to change the traditional system of government by cabinet if Labour wins the next election. The Labour leader said to be looking at a powerful executive of just him and 3 others who would make key decisions before presenting them to the cabinet. The Gang of 4 would also include the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, the Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, and Pat McFadden. The paper welcomes the plan, saying the cabinet's too big to be an effective decision-making body.
More from the papers in about half an hour's time. Quite an interesting morning from them. Those news conferences this morning are going to be lively affairs. Time now is 6:10.
And we turn to the Oscars. Katie Razzle is on the line, our culture editor. Give us a sense, Katie, of surprises and things that went well, things that didn't go so well.
Well, Justin, I have to say, when you say surprises, there weren't many. This was probably one of the most predictable Oscars. And that is not to take away from Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer, which has won 7 awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor. That's for Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. But it's just that it's looked certain for months. The narrative has been, Christopher Nolan has never won an Oscar before. The narrative has been this is his time, his year. And of course, he's delivered a blockbuster movie in Oppenheimer. So this is the first year for a while, quite interestingly, that a big budget film that people have actually watched has won Best Picture at the Oscars. I'd say the only real nail-biter of the night was the Best Actress race. History could have been made if Lily Gladstone, who's in Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, if she had won, she'd have been the first Native American to win an acting Oscar. She was in a sort of dead heat, it always felt, for the last few weeks anyway, with Emma Stone for Poor Things. And Emma Stone did indeed win that. She's sort of Hollywood royalty by now, if you like. This is her second Oscar. The first was for La La Land. So that first didn't happen for Lily Gladstone, but we have had other firsts, including Jonathan Glazer's film, The Zone of Interest, which is in German, about the Holocaust and the commandant of Auschwitz and his family. And that won Best International Feature, which is the first time a British film has done that. Now, throughout the ceremony, there were politics on show. Jonathan Glazer, the director of The Zone of Interest, made a speech about what was happening in Israel and Gaza. He talked about the victims of dehumanization. Then the Ukrainian director of the documentary that won, 20 Days in Mariupol, spoke about that conflict. He said he wished he'd never had to make the film and that he'd have exchanged it for Russia, never attacking Ukraine. And of course, both of them got applause in the room. But the ceremony was also an opportunity for Hollywood A-listers to have fun. And you don't get much more fun than Ryan Gosling performing I'm Just Ken in hot pink sequins. And I do think, he stole the show. Even if Barbie, the biggest grossing film of the year, only won 1 Oscar, that was Best Song for 22-year-old Billie Eilish, which makes her the youngest person ever to have won 2 Oscars.
Katie, thank you. Zone of Interest also won Best Sound, and we'll be talking to the person who was in charge of the sound on it at 20 past 8.
13 minutes past 6. David Neal, the former Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, has given an interview to us on the Today podcast, which is now available, in which he's made a number of strong claims about the reasons for his being sacked from his role from the Home Office. He calls it a dysfunctional place, and he says that most members of the public would be shocked if they knew the reality of what goes on at our borders. Dominic Casciani, our home and legal correspondent, has been listening. Dom, morning. We've heard the Home Office being traduced many times in the past. John Reed notoriously called it not fit for purpose, but there's a whole new level of detail from David Neal here.
Yes, that's right. Morning, Anmol. It's quite an interesting interview because, in effect, Mr. Neal is the most senior independent voice with detailed knowledge of the Home Office to publicly criticise its handling of migration in recent times. He, in effect, was sacked last month after he told journalists of his concerns that the Border Force was failing to carry out proper security checks on private jets. Now, in essence, that's in one of his reports, which remains unpublished, but the Home Office was disputing with him some of the statistics and figures in his conclusions, and so when he spoke to journalists about that was the tipping point, and they decided to sack him. But in his interview with the podcast, which obviously you're going to run later, he really does lay into the Home Office's culture. He describes it as a place where there is a culture of immigration officials and senior officials blaming up all the way to ministers, and when he tries to raise constructive solutions with them in effectively drawing on his experience of a career in the military and as a military leader, he says he receives a moment where eyes are rolled, effectively an expression where senior civil servants are effectively saying, well, it's not our problem, we can't solve this, it's all down to beastly Home Secretary. So that's effectively what he's implying there, and he says this is simply not good enough, you wouldn't get away with that in other walks of life, and that the entire culture has to be challenged and changed in order for the immigration system to work as well as it really should. So it's a very, very, very critical interview that he gives. Now, one interesting example in that, Amal, is he talks about some officers in the Border Force at the E-gates
at Heathrow not having radios in order to alert colleagues. Now, he says that's absolute madness. The Home Office, in its response overnight to the interview, has said, look, those officers aren't working in isolation. There are other officers at the gates, and indeed the Home Office says it's partially accepted that recommendation from him. But effectively it's pushing back and says, look, he's one part of the whole system of things in place to ensure that immigration is working properly.
And to give it the scrutiny it deserves. Don Casciani, our Home and Legal Correspondent, thank you.
60 minutes past 6. Nuclear power was a feature of the Chancellor's budget last week. Is it, though, going to help us get to net zero in time, if indeed is that still what the UK wants to do? Sean Farrington has more on that in the rest of the day's Business News. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Justin. Yeah, so Jeremy Hunt announced that the government is going to buy these 2 sites from Hitachi, one in Wilfer in North Wales and Albury in South Gloucestershire, for new nuclear developments at the cost of £160 million. The Chancellor, he confirmed that selected companies can now bid to build what's called these small modular reactors, with a decision being made later on this year. And I've got Simon Bowen with me, who's the chairman of Great British Nuclear, that government body set up to oversee some of the UK's nuclear ambitions. Simon, morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
I know there'll be a long way to go. That's one thing we've learnt with nuclear projects. But when would you expect to have projects in Wilfer and Albury up and running, producing energy to run our homes and businesses?
So the target is to, and this is the reason we acquired the sites, is because obviously the sites are critical enablers to get these projects up and running. The target is to deliver 2 final investment decisions in the next Parliament, so about 28, 29, and our target is to get the detailed design work done and all of the regulatory approvals done by then, with the power plants coming online likely in the mid-2030s.
Right, I mean, when we have the Parliament's Environmental Audit Committee saying last month that these small nuclear reactors are unlikely to help hit the government's target of moving the grid to clean energy by 2035, does all of this say we've missed the boat a little bit for what we were attempting to achieve?
Well, of course, we always wish we should have started earlier. Because Hinkley Point was online during the energy crisis, we'd have saved the consumer £4.2 billion. So it has a critical part to play. And yes, it would have been better if we started earlier, but we didn't. So our job now is to get these plants, get the selection process done as quickly as we can, get the design work done, and get the plants built. And the critical thing is, once you've built one, because these are modular, i.e. you can make them off-site, then the contracts that we're placing in the market allow the vendors to bid for more than one plant. So we're asking for up to 1.5 gigawatts, which means that these SMR vendors can bid to build 3 or 4 of them. The first one online will be around about 2035, but then as we build factories to do all the work off-site, we should then be able to roll them out pretty quickly after that. So it's not then another 10 years to wait for the next one. We should be able to roll them out in kind of 3 years, then 2 years, then 1 year, and then as if because there'll be a production line. So they will contribute, but it'll be after 2035.
You mentioned Hinkley Point C. I mean that plant in Somerset, billions of pounds over budget, and recently we've had confirmation that it will be several years late. What was the big mistake made that meant that we haven't had that and that kind of project and others like it up and running on time?
Well, I think the mistake for the programme is we didn't start the programme earlier, so we would have had nuclear power earlier. These are big, complex projects, and like many infrastructure projects, there's a huge amount of pressure to get started. And the one thing that the team at Hinkley would point to is that we started construction too early without all the design work complete. So one of the things we're doing in the small modular space is we will not be starting construction until the design work is complete. So that avoids any having to repeat work or nugatory work because you've realised that your design is incorrect. And that's some of the issues that we faced at Hinkley.
Simon Bowen, Chairman of Great British Nuclear, thank you very much. A new report out today saying there's been good progress on improving ethnic diversity in the boardrooms of the UK's biggest listed companies, but now more needs to be done to encourage more private companies to make the same steps forward, so says the Parker Review, that looks at ethnic diversity on the FTSE 350 boards. There's 350 biggest companies listed on our stock markets and 50 of the UK's largest private companies as well. I've got David Tyler with me, who's the Review's chair, joins me now. He's chair of PZ Cussons as well, former chairman of Sainsbury's. David, morning.
Good morning.
Good progress. How's that being made? What has changed? What conversations are boardrooms having now that they should have been having many years ago?
Well, I think they take this very seriously because boards see there's a benefit to them in terms of their own profitability of having a wide debate, a much higher quality debate, and you get that by having diverse members of your team, both at the board and at the senior management level. And this is going on in a very serious way. We've been encouraging it this year for the first time by asking boards to set targets for their senior management team. And we're seeing progress there. So the first time today, Sean, I can tell you that in the FTSE 100 today, around 13% of the senior management teams are made up of ethnic diverse people, and they set a target for 2027, that's 4 years' time, of getting that to 17%. These are figures on average. Obviously, they change from company to company depending on their circumstances. Boards are taking this seriously because it makes sense for them, and obviously it provides equality of opportunity for everybody who joins them from ethnic diverse backgrounds.
And you say, of course, it's an average. So when you look at it, which sectors or which parts need to step up more? Because if you're talking about positivity as an average, there's often somebody or some group that maybe aren't doing quite as much.
Yeah, there are. I'm not going to name any particular sectors today. It's a bit early in our process, having only done it for the first time this year, to say that.
Wouldn't that help, though, to be able to do that?
I'm so sorry.
Wouldn't that help to name the sectors?
Yes, indeed. I imagine we'll do it in future years, but at this stage, we haven't done that. But we're seeing a significant growth, as I say, in ethnic minority directors and senior managers, which is helpful. There's clearly still more to do, but you don't build Rome in a day. You know, we've grown now to our FTSE 100 directors, Sean, 19% of them today, 19%. Come from ethnic minorities. Now that's in a country where the average ethnic diversity, average in the population, if you look at the census in 2021, showed 17% of our people come from ethnic minorities. I know there's a bit, of course, by overseas directors, but it's a significant number today.
And part of this review is, those numbers are important for the monitoring. I caught up with Michael Barrington-Hibbert, who's an ethnic minority recruitment specialist. Just wanted to have a listen to what he had to say about some of the challenges in getting minority candidates into boardrooms, into those chief financial officer, chief executive positions.
And what we have seen over the last 5 years is that organisations have created a number of initiatives, one being making sure that shortlists are diverse, that they're creating a diverse pipeline. But why isn't this working? It's simply because there's a mistrust. More women, more ethnic minorities are being called and being approached by executive search firms to go on shortlists where they know they do not have a chance of being successful.
Do you see that as an issue, David, within that, where you're creating shortlists and people are appearing on them when they don't think they've got a chance of the job?
Well, I'm aware that could be a problem in some cases, but let me just look at the figures, Sean. Today, of the FTSE 100, 12 have minority ethnic chief executives. You're talking to them regularly, I don't have to name them. People who are chief executives of major banks, major medical companies, major financial services companies, Shell, Rolls-Royce and elsewhere. If that was really the case, how is it that people like the individuals that who I'm talking about, have gone up step by step through these organisations?
Well, just because, it's a small number though, isn't it? Of course, we've only got 100 companies to talk about in the FTSE 100, but that doesn't distract from the real experience that many more people can have when you're talking about shortlists for every boardroom position across the big companies in the UK.
Yeah, look, I'm sure that those issues do exist, and I don't defend them in the slightest. But what I would say is, step by step, companies in this country, and that includes private companies that you referred to in your introduction, are making progress in this area. And that's what our objective is in the review, to help people, to give them assistance in thinking about this, because it's in their interest for them to achieve their own best position as a competitive business, to ensure that they take advantage of all the talents in our country, not just those who are white males. And progress has certainly been made. I don't want to be Pollyannish about it, because there's still much more to do.
David,
but we are pleased with progress.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. David Tyler, Chair Review. Check in with Shanti Kellerman, Chief Investment Officer at M&G Wealth. Morning, Shanti.
Good morning.
These US jobs numbers on Friday, 275,000 jobs added in February. What do we make of that, and what does it mean for interest rates?
So that was a reasonable result in terms of expectations, but they went back and changed the previous month's figures to be lower. So they made the previous month 350 to about 230. On balance, maybe you say it's slightly more likely that interest rates will go down, but I think the real issue here is about survey data and how it's becoming more and more unreliable. It changes constantly. We see big revisions in these numbers and also in GDP. We've seen the ONS in the UK talking about trying to come up with new ways to measure employment. When central banks are so focused on data and the data isn't necessarily reliable, I think it introduces a lot of noise to the markets and makes things move around potentially a lot more than they should.
Shanti, thank you. I'll speak to you more next time. Shanti Kellerman, Chief Investment Officer at M&G Wealth. I'm going to be back talking about the jobs market here in the UK and what that might mean for interest rates here just after 7.
Look forward to that as ever, Sean. Thank you very much indeed. It is 27 minutes past 6 and Rob is here with the sport. Hi, Rob.
Good morning, I'm Well, a weekend of riveting sport certainly. First on Saturday at Twickenham, followed yesterday in Cardiff by an 8-try Six Nations thriller between Wales and France, and at Anfield by that 1-1 draw between Liverpool and Manchester City. And that's where we'll start with a match that left Arsenal top of the Premier League table, but only on goal difference from Liverpool, with Manchester City a further point behind. Here's football correspondent John Mullen.
It was the reigning champions Manchester City who carried the greater threat in the first half, and it was they who took the lead from a perfectly worked corner that was forced in at the near post by John Stones. But Liverpool took the match back to City in the second half, equalised early from a McAllister penalty after goalkeeper Ederson cleaned out Nunez. He was injured in the process. Replacement City keeper Ortega was called on to make saves. Diaz couldn't take big chances. There was a Liverpool penalty claim right near the end, but at the other end, Doku came so close to swinging it back City's way when shooting against a post. But the net result? Both matches between them this season have ended 1-1.
And out of the two managers, Liverpool's Jurgen Klopp first, City's Pep Guardiola second.
Wow, we were really good today. Each individual performance was absolutely exceptional today.
Difficult, really difficult game, and I know the players wanted to play, but it was really not easy.
Meanwhile, Tottenham won 4-0 at Aston Villa, a result that left Spurs just 2 points behind Villa, who are 4th in the table. Elsewhere, Brighton beat Nottingham Forest 1-0, West Ham and Burnley drew, and both Rangers and Celtic are through to the Scottish Cup semi-finals. All your football details, of course, on the BBC Sport website and app. But now to that Six Nations fixture in Cardiff. Wales 24, France 45 was clearly full of spectacular action, but the French imposed themselves in the last 20 minutes or so, leaving Wales at the bottom of the table and facing the possibility of a first wooden spoon since 2003. Wales' final fixture is home to Italy. Here's head coach Warren Gatland.
We've got to be excited about it. We've got to embrace it. You can't hide away from the challenges, and we've never done that. So you can't go into your shower. You can't. There's going to be a lot of external pressure, and there's expectation, and international rugby is always about that. We've got to just embrace it and front up and make sure we work hard next week.
And the story of teenage darts sensation Luke Littler continues. A 9-dart finish in the Belgian Open final helped him to an 8-7 win against Rob Cross on his European Tour debut. So to the tips then. Plumpton 2 o'clock, number 2 Fierce Warrior. And I thought I'd channel my inner 1978 Belgian punk personality for this one. Taunton 310, number 8 Ça plane pour moi.
Aha.
Plastique Bertrand.
You whippersnappers are too young to remember.
No, I'm all certainly right. I roughly do. Anyway, tomorrow morning on Radio 4 there is this.
What advice would you give to your younger self? That's the question I pose each week.
I'd have to ask which self and when. There seem to have been so many of them.
Guests including Jada Pinkett Smith and Jamie Oliver are available now on BBC Sounds.
I was really annoying when I was young.
I had to learn how to love myself.
And the series continues with Philip Pullman and next, Melanie Brown.
Doing an interview like this one-on-one, I get really nervous and butterflying. But put me in Wembley Stadium with the Spice Girls music and I'm just in my element.
Young Again with me, Kirsty Young, on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Tuesday mornings at 11.
Time now is 29 minutes to 7. You're listening to Radio 4 with the Today programme with Justin Weber and Mo Welsh. And here's a summary of the news from Charles Carroll.
The world's 4 biggest photo agencies have all withdrawn a new image of the Princess of Wales from circulation over concerns that it has been manipulated. The picture, posted for Mother's Day, is the first of Kate since she had abdominal surgery in January. Kensington Palace, which released the photo, has not commented. The recently sacked Independent Inspector of Borders and Immigration has told the Today podcast that the Home Office is dysfunctional and in urgent need of complete reform. In his first broadcast interview since he was dismissed, David Neil said failings in the immigration system went right to the top of the organisation. The Home Office says Mr Neil was sacked for leaking sensitive information he was told was inaccurate. Western countries, including the United States and Germany, have been airlifting their diplomats out of the embassies in Haiti as the country descends further into violence. The UN says police are only protecting the port, the airport and key buildings, leaving armed gangs to loot shops and carry out attacks. Millions of Haitians are trapped as the chaos and violence worsens. The mother